to the Trinity Force Podcast. Yo, it's that Triforce cast beaming straight to your home. Grab a beer so we know Pone ain't drinking alone. Send an email, a quick tweet, just pick up the phone. Leave a message at the beep if you're a creep, watch your tone. Discuss the meta game, patch notes, whatever helps your stats most. Obi-Pone Kenobi is your last hope to snatch gold. So grab your headphones and join in the fun. We'll try and force in some jokes and some cringeworthy puns. Yo, we can make it together, people. Trinity Force Podcast. These boys are second to none. Now that's the end of the intro. It's time we begun.
Hey guys, welcome to the Trinity Force Podcast. My name is Adam Ponophobia Cogswell, joined by 5 great guys. There's 10 with 2 hands. 5 great guys this evening. We are, if you're watching the live stream, we are the Cutoff Brothers this evening. Well, much like the Shield Brothers.
It started with Mitch, and then I had to go find my Dare shirt because we'll be talking about addiction tonight.
What voice was that?
Got to get really low and say
addiction.
Anyone with your beard wearing a Dare shirt and saying the words addiction, to me, I'm going to run away.
This was my college drinking shirt.
As a grown-up, I will run away from that.
Punch is here.
Yes. Hey, guys.
Brent is here. Telenasty. Hey, Serial's here.
What's up, guys?
Chira is here.
Hey.
And last host of the Hearth of the Cards podcast, you can find them over at TrinityForceNetwork.com, is Chris Alphenaar himself.
Hey, hey.
Yeah, we brought him on to take over this podcast because clearly Hearth of the Cards is better at League of Legends. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk Hearthstone, and they're going to talk League of Legends. We're just swapping it up. It'll be great.
Well met.
Be fine.
God damn it.
Have you guys seen that new stacked dragon? It starts as a 2/6. It doubles it as it's a
2/8.
Oh, it's 2/8. Even better.
Yep, for 6 mana.
Priests are salivating at that one. Just
I wish I knew what was going on.
All the new.
I knew the well met thing because that's used all the time in Heroes, but.
Chira, you know what we're doing? You know what we're doing, Chira? Most of us are drinking right now.
You know what?
And
Go
we're doing
fuck
an
yourself.
episode. And no. But we're doing an episode about addiction, and that makes 0 sense.
I'm addicted to caffeine, and I'm drinking caffeine.
I haven't
don't
had
worry, I'm
any
not gonna-
caffeine either in like a week.
Me too.
God, I'm Chira. I'm so good at not having things. Ugh. I don't eat red meat, and I don't have
That's not true.
caffeine.
I love red meat.
Chira loves
I'm
me
a
some meat.
vegetarian.
I love me some meat. I'll eat meat. I just had.
Somebody
Is this
clip
an
that?
intervention?
Can somebody
ate
clip
pork
that?
right now?
Yeah, I'll
20
clip it.
minutes ago.
308.
I really want Chira saying, "I love me some meat."
I love me some meat. I'm a meat boy.
Are you a meat gobbler?
I love just shoveling meat in my mouth.
Do you like chicken?
I love it.
So can we call you a cock gobbler?
Why not?
Are you stealing that from Code Monkeys?
No, I'm not.
I think you did.
I'm really not.
Thank you.
I'm
Someone
almost
got
positive you did.
Oh
Yeah,
man, this has just evolved really quick. What is going to be
Yeah.
like a
It
super
didn't
serious
start.
discussion?
It didn't start even close to like baseline.
Is this-
it was way.
Is this an intervention for me being addicted to meat?
Lancer just said that'll be isolated tomorrow. Excellent. Well met. All right, everyone, put your serious game faces on. We may be in tank tops. Chira may have his head, his
My
hair back,
is too
and
long now.
he's got like the hipster look going on. He's got the cutoff, and the hair back, and the
Definitely.
beard.
Is it a pony yet? Can you do like the pony
No,
thing?
it's gonna get there eventually. Probably. I think I might grow it out long enough to donate it because I'm gonna be a nice boy.
You look like a Young Life counselor.
Yeah,
Okay, seriously. Switch the gears. We have to get into serious mode because this is actually a very, very serious and potentially life-threatening discussion that we're going to have this evening. For some other people, not for us, as we are. Well, some of us may be addicted.
scared.
So a few weeks ago, we had a guest on. Hawk came on the podcast. Daniel was his name. He was a Patreon subscriber. Is a Patreon subscriber, I should say. So thank you, Daniel, for coming on and sparking this discussion. And we had a very short discussion, probably about 15 minutes, if that, about addiction, because he had mentioned that he was addicted at one time. Chira and I both shared stories of addiction that we had, and we shared our thoughts on how to deal with addiction. Well, after that, we actually had an outpouring of users that are addicted to something, whether it be caffeine, to alcohol, to
people that just wanted to hear about it.
yeah, it was honestly it was this wide gambit, and I'm proud that they're able to like reach out to somebody and say, yeah, I'm addicted to this. What can I do? And so that's at that point is when I went to Chris and I said, Chris, I got these people coming to me. I think we should do an episode on addiction. Also, can you come up with a list of ways to deal with addiction, including numbers you can call, people you can talk to? And Chris, being the great person he is, jumped right on that and started compiling all these lists and everything for us. So that's why we brought him on. So Chris, first and foremost, I know you've been on this podcast. I know they're listening to Hearth and Cards, but I want you to go ahead and give your credentials to those who may be new to the podcast and may not know who you are, since you've only been on like twice before this, maybe 3 times.
Something like that.
Something like that. So let them know who you are and why you are qualified to talk about addiction.
Okay. So I have a master's in counseling psychology, and I practice therapy in the state of Michigan. And I also do addiction counseling as well, or therapy. And yep, that's it.
Wow, that's it. That's your short little.
That's my spiel. Yeah, I'm like the worst self-seller ever.
You're supposed to be like, I'm a master level psychologist. I work with Weldon Green. We do this, that.
Oh,
I'm
that's
also
stuff too. Yeah. So I have been working with Weldon and our team with sports psych stuff too. So I take the stuff that I know from psychology and give them some ideas that I come up with, and they teach me all their cool stuff about sports psych. And so with the esports stuff, then I've been in that scene trying to share some knowledge and help in that realm too. So that's been pretty awesome. Learn a lot and get to meet some pretty cool people. So that's pretty much how I started to get to know you guys, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
so.
through Claude. You had reached out to Claude, and they came on, and our relationship blossomed from there.
It did.
I'm still not ready to pay for dinner yet, though. All right, let's talk about addiction, because that's probably the first thing that we need to talk about is defining what addiction is, and to try to give people some way to look at addiction. And then I'm sure you have topics, and we can kind of move from there. So more or less, I'm kind of letting you host this,
okay,
and move the conversation along. But I'm sure we'll have plenty of things to chime in. But that's where I'd like to start, if we can.
Okay. So the first thing I would say is, like, I remember when I was in school, then when I, like, in certain classes, I'd hear stuff and be like, oh my gosh, I have that. So I want to say at the beginning that when we talk about this stuff, then you may be able to relate some things, and self-diagnosis can be really easy to do. I thought I, like, had Huntington's disease at one point because my leg was twitching, so I don't have Huntington's disease. So, like, when we talk about this stuff, I think that's something to kind of clarify at the beginning. But I heard what you guys talked about. I thought it was really awesome. I thought that you guys covered pretty much a lot of the things that I wanted to go into, and we can expand upon that. So he had said that the person that Hawk that was on, that he had talked about how what he was going through. And I looked up in the DSM, which, for those that don't know, that's like the diagnostic manual that I use for diagnosing, like, anxiety or schizophrenia or bipolar.
They use to diagnose like everything.
Exactly. And it's like, it's in what's called the conditions for further study, this idea of internet gaming disorder. And so it's not an actual diagnosis at this moment. The only behavioral addiction that you can be diagnosed with is gambling disorder. So everything else is substance related. So whether it's alcohol or cocaine or all that kind of stuff. Excuse me. But they are seeing that this could be in that realm of similar to gambling disorder, but they don't have enough research yet to back it up. So that's why they are going to keep compiling research until they can decide whether it does fit and how, and the criteria and everything. Now, what I read was in China, what's interesting is they actually have it as an addiction, and they have certain treatment for it as well. So they had some interesting stats on that. A lot of times it's like, I think they said it was 12 to 20-year-old males are the highest population. And so adolescent males, basically. And yeah, so that's something that they recognize as, for them, an actual thing that you can be diagnosed with.
Do you know if that's just China or if that's a wider region out there?
According to the DSM, then at this point, it's only the Chinese government that I saw. Now, maybe there's been new literature since then, because this was the DSM-5 came out, I think it was 2 years ago in May.
I remember them talking about it in my classes, that the new DSM was on its way out, so I can look that up for you.
Yeah. We didn't have to start... Well, that doesn't matter. So, anyways.
Yeah, May 2013.
Okay, so it'll be 3 years then.
Yep.
So yeah, so there might be some new stuff. But since that hasn't been updated yet, then it still isn't able to be diagnosed in the States as of right now.
I was just curious because you hear about internet cafes over in Korea and people spending
Mm-hmm.
long amounts of time in there. So I wondered if Korea had a similar diagnosis.
Days at a time. Yeah.
Let me see. They did talk about like the I made copies of this. So
You gonna hand them
there's
out?
been a lot, yeah, South
gonna
Korea.
say.
they talk about- yeah, there's a lot of information. So I didn't memorize all of it ahead of time because I don't have to diagnose it, so I don't know it that well off the top of my head. But in South Korea, then I guess there's a lot of information from there too. But as far as I know, then what it said was just China was the only one that you can diagnose in right now. So, but that may have changed.
So what do they use to diagnose video game addiction?
So what they're proposing is there's 9 different proposed criteria. I can just read them off if you want me to.
That'd be fine.
Okay, so the first one is preoccupation with video games. So you're thinking about it all the time, basically. The next one is withdrawal symptoms when internet gaming is taken away. So that could be anxiety, sadness, irritability, that kind of stuff. Third is tolerance. So you need to increase the time you spend with it for you to get the same effects. And then unsuccessful attempts to control the participation in internet games. So you try to quit and you can't. Fifth one would be loss of interest in other hobbies that you used to play or be engaged in. Sixth is continued excessive use of video games despite knowledge of of psychosocial problems. So problems with like your friends, your family, loved ones, that kind of stuff. And then 7 is you've deceived family members, therapists, or others regarding the amount of internet gaming. And then 8 is use of internet gaming to escape or relieve a negative mood, such as feelings of helplessness, guilt, anxiety, that kind of a thing. And lastly, jeopardized or lost a significant relationship, job, or educational or career opportunity because of the participation in internet games.
So with that list,
You need to have 5 of those.
yeah, I guess you just answered my question then. How many of those do you have? Do you have to have 5?
That's what they're proposing right now.
Out of, you said 9, is that correct? Somebody read off?
Yeah. And then within that, there's like mild, moderate, and then severe, depending upon how it's affected your life. And that's very similar to like we do the same thing when we diagnose for, let's just say, alcohol. Then it's based on those levels too: mild, moderate, severe. But those are, if I remember right, that's like based upon how many criteria you meet, whether it's mild, moderate, or severe. So if you meet like 2 or 3, that's like mild. 3 or 4, or no, 4 or 5, that's moderate, and then 5 or 6 or more, and that's severe. I think that's off the top of my head, somewhere around there. It's kind of how it goes. Go ahead.
Are this criteria similar to, like, you would say, like an alcohol addiction? Like, because they sound like they could be plugged in, and you could put the same thing for drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, even maybe.
Yes. It
Especially
is
the
very
loss
similar. Absolutely.
Yeah, loss of social situations, or hurting your job or career, or family members, or neglecting other activities, or becoming more and more dependent to get that fix, like you were saying.
What was, read number 2 or 3 again. I think that was the one.
Withdrawal symptoms when internet gaming is taken away is number 2. So that's like irritability, anxiety, or sadness. And then number 1 is preoccupation with video games. The individual thinks about previous gaming activities or anticipates playing the next game. Like the internet gaming becomes the dominant activity in the daily life.
So with those 2, we're talking more of it's a type of, you're skipping class, you're skipping work, you're not going out to family functions, you're just thinking about the next piece of it. And that's where I want to make a distinction here, because I think some of those can, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can write a blurry line between like preoccupation and addiction.
Like, you could go preoccupation just because of the fact that, hey, we're doing a show on League of Legends and we're thinking about doing stuff based on League of Legends, but that's not our primary job. That
right.
That's
not
1 out of
necessarily
9 things.
Yeah, that's a
right.
preoccupation, the fact that, like, we're doing this sort of thing, but it's not necessarily in the addiction line of that, because this isn't something that's, like, necessarily terribly impacting our daily lives.
I guess I'm trying to give a way for, if somebody was attempt to self-diagnose themselves based off these 9, and if you can hand me these 9 after the podcast, I'm going to put them in the document as well, so people can kind of, or at least give me some kind of resource people can read about the video game addiction and China, because let's just say, for the sake of the conversation, I'm listening to this podcast, I'm attempting to self-diagnose myself, right? And I'm starting to I'm trying to nitpick on these different pieces to find 5 of them, but every time I come up with a different excuse, or I say, I'm not addicted because this is my job, or I'm not addicted because I'm trying to get to the top 0.01% of the game right now, or and you're trying to quantify your addiction essentially.
Creating reasons as to why what you're doing is not a bad thing.
Right. So is there an easy? I won't say easy because, like you said, it's hard to self-diagnose. You would need somebody else to do it for you.
No, it's not
it's
that
probably
it's hard to
dangerous
self-diagnose.
well.
It's
dangerous.
easy. It's
Yeah.
really easy to self-diagnose because it's like, hey, you look at this one thing. I have thought about League of Legends outside. I've thought about League at work. Does that count as a preoccupation? It'd be a mild one.
Though.
If it becomes to the point where like you think about League so much that you're sitting there at work, you should be doing something on your computer, and you're just sitting there.
And your mind's wandering, and you're just thinking about
your mind's not just wandering. Like you're sitting there drawing out like strategies on how you're going to go tonight into dynamic queue and try and make some waves with that sweet new
Nasus
way you
support.
want to play
support.
your AP Nasus mid lane that you were so excited about, and this is what you've just been nothing but focused on, and your boss is over your shoulder looking at your Gunblade Nunu, and your boss is over your shoulder looking at you and just starts breathing down your neck like, what the fuck are you doing? And then you're fired, and you had a I just made a worst possible situation with preoccupation for this.
Did something happen, Shira?
No, nothing happened at all. Nothing happened.
This exact situation just happened.
A couple things.
Specific.
One, with like it is one of the reasons why it's hard to self-diagnose is because it's really hard for us to be able to see ourselves like objectively. So that's why it's good to, if you're like for diagnosis reasons, if you're looking for a diagnosis, to get someone that's a professional in that area. It is good to be aware of things though. So I'm not saying that like you should be blind to it or that you shouldn't think about these things. But I have people all the time that tell me, oh, I have bipolar. And I look at, after talking with them, I'm thinking like, no, that's not accurate, because there could be a misunderstanding of different information and assumption that just because there's mood swings, it means the person is bipolar, and that's not the whole thing. That's, one of the criteria. But going back to this, you need to have 5 criteria. And so you can have a preoccupation. That's fine. It's just like when you have 5 or more, that's when there's an issue. If there's 4 or more, you're Gucci. Like, it's not a big deal.
Over the edge.
Yeah,
is it really not that big of a deal if you get diagnosed with 4 out of the 5? Like, shouldn't you see some mild form of treatment or something?
So that's a good point. I guess I don't want to just blanket and say it's not a big deal, because it can be a big deal depending upon how it's affecting you. Like if you're losing all your friends because you're focusing on a certain game, but generally speaking, then if it's not usually just that one thing. Usually it's going to be stuff on top of it too. Does that make sense? Like if you're losing friends, then you're probably also preoccupied because you're doing it all the time, and you're also you're probably using it to relieve your mood. You probably increase your tolerance. Like usually these things kind of go hand in hand anyways. But for instance, like you're talking about preoccupation because you're doing this for you're talking about patch notes, all that kind of stuff. That's separate. That's not when you're doing it with a purpose, then that's different than when you're using it as like an escape. That can go into a whole other angle. But that's like when you have something that's purposeful behind it and a goal, rather than using it to escape from things, or like your only focus is on that because you guys have jobs or school or whatever it could be, and it's not that it's taking away, it's just something extra that you do. It's a hobby, or it's like a side job, or it's whatever it could be.
I feel like a lot of them have to kind of start bleeding into each other as a way to be able to tell that it's a problem, instead of just having, I play this a lot and I don't know, I can't wait to play my next game. It's like, well, that didn't really bleed into anything else. It's not really hurting me. Even if that one thing is a lot or very intense, like I think you need a bunch of them, and they have to be really cyclical before you can. I think that's where the professional comes into play to really understand what's going on, besides being subjective about yourself.
Absolutely. And one of the things they'd said, at least in what they're looking for in China, is 8 to 10 hours a day. That's kind of what is like a normal type of time frame for somebody to play, like on like the regular, not just like a one-time 8 to 10, but like on the regular. So that's
acceptable, or that's where you're starting to see addiction?
That's like the general number of when you see somebody that has addiction, is when they're spending like that much. And it's, again, I would say like it's when there's not purpose. Like I would say professional league players, that's different, because they're focusing on their craft. Yeah, exactly. And I was having this conversation with Chira a little bit before we got on, with like, I think that it's if you think about like basketball, then you have to practice that hours and hours and hours and hours. And that's, somebody isn't necessarily saying that you're addicted to basketball.
Right. Well, if you're really good at basketball, you wouldn't be considered addicted to basketball. Like, you are doing something that you're good at, and that's your hobby. And if you're, if you make the high school team and you're, in the starting lineup and you move on, you play college, or if you go pro, like, were you addicted to basketball? No. Were you obsessed? Probably, if you were going to go that far.
Yeah,
definitely dedicated. You probably put that almost over anything else in your life necessarily, but it's not seen as an addiction just because it's created a positive for you.
Is there a distinction between obsession and addiction?
I would say like a big thing would be like whether it's pathological or not. Meaning like if it's bringing more harm than good. Like if it's like I said, tearing away from things and there's not like a purpose. Like a pro player, they're going to be spending a lot of hours, and so they may not be able to have time, engaging with certain people that they care about. But if they're able to make time when they have the opportunity, because it's more of like a job. Like I go to work 8 hours every day, right? But that doesn't mean that I'm like addicted to that. So I would say if it's like pathological and that you're it's causing issues in your life to where you're losing friends, you feel like you have to have it. You can't like feel normal without having it. Like when you're having someone with those withdrawal symptoms, like you feel like you're irritable, anxious when you're not around it. When it's all you think about, that's the kind of stuff that's like the pathological thing, rather than when you're trying to improve.
Would you say that it's easier for maybe a pro league player to become addicted to the game than, say, a pro sports player? Because, league players, they live in the gaming house, and it kind of seems like they don't have a 8 to 5 schedule like we do. If you see someone staying late to work every single day, you might call them a workaholic. And obviously it might have to fit some other criteria, but league players, especially pro players, they live in a gaming house. They're forced to move into a house with a game all day. They might scrim 8 hours a day, and then they play league more at night in solo queue. And even like professional football or sports players, they probably go to training camp, or they have 2-a-day practices, and then they go home to their families usually. Whereas pro players in league are not only is they're younger, so they're probably more susceptible to this, but also they're forced to live in an environment where they see it all the time.
That's a good question.
And maybe there's more bleed over.
I think one thing that might come into play there is something about video games is that they're inherently like replay value is always there. Like you can almost always be playing. Whereas if you were able to stay up all night playing basketball, you might burn a shit ton of calories. You might end up collapsed from dehydration. But I feel like that doesn't happen nearly as much, and people can.
Well, there isn't necessarily the physical barrier there that inhibits you from like. If you did that, if you played basketball all night and then expected to get up and play another 12 hours. Your body's going to break down to the point where you can't function. Whereas like a game, as long as you're fed, as long as you, for most people, get at least some sleep, you can just get into a game. And other than like the mental exhaustion from it, there's no like physical barrier necessarily.
Your whole body will tell you when you're done in basketball. If you could look out your window and realize the sun's gone. Or the sun's back, I guess, in that sense. It could be either one when you're playing this. Also, I love that we keep using basketball when we're all in cutoffs. I feel like we planned this, except announcing the T-Force basketball team.
I think that even leads more towards the whole, it's just slightly easier to become addicted to League or video games in general, is because you don't have your body telling you no. You don't have, if you're even using it professionally, there's that bleed over because you don't have anywhere to go home to. That's where you live.
That's the other thing too. There isn't a physical barrier to get into the game either. Like you don't have to be in really, really good shape to be able to necessarily compete with people that are probably in good shape in something else, and like something that requires more of a combination between maybe actual athletics and the mental fortitude to be able to do what they're doing. Whereas like with League, it's mind games from start to finish. Like that's what this game is. It's mind games and how good, your hand-eye coordination is.
I think here's a question, and hopefully you can shed some insight into this, Chris. So is it possible to become addicted to something if you don't spend a large amount of time doing it? And what I'm thinking of exactly is we're comparing video games to professional sports. Professional sports, you can't spend, like we said, a long period of time playing basketball all day. where you can with League of Legends or any other video game. So is it possible to become addicted to a professional sport where you are inherently limited to how much you can play just because of physical barriers?
I don't know. I think that the answer would be, at this point, there's no research, at least I'm gonna say there's no research. There's nothing in the DSM that is looking at right now at professional, like traditional sports as being,
or any activity in general.
Well, I mean,
right. Then you can be addicted to. Like right now, the only thing that's behaviorally based is gambling. Like that's literally the only thing. Everything else that you can be like diagnosed as addicted to is a drug. So I think that's interesting to me, that sounds like there is something different, like we've kind of been touching on, between the two things. And and a part of it, I think, is because of video games. Then because they specify right now, internet gaming, it's not like talking about Facebook, it's not talking about porn, it's not talking about like other things that you
porn.
It said it doesn't talk about.
No, I'm like, I don't know who discusses that very often.
Well, it doesn't have those as things that they're talking about this particular diagnosis potentially being a thing. Then it's talking specifically about internet gaming. And I think that, for instance, like you guys talked about WoW last time, when I was doing my, like, it was 6 years ago, then right after I had gotten out of college, my internship, then the doctor there was telling me that like WoW is specifically made to be addicting. Like that's the way the game is designed, so that you keep going back and playing with it. And I think that video games are easier to have that sort of response from. Like when it comes to it seems like it's similar in gambling in that like you can get certain neurochemicals that you can still. I'm not saying you can't get it in sports. And I don't really know enough about how all the different neurochemicals that you get in those situations. I know some, but like that would be better stuff for like Weldon and them. But with gaming, then some of the things that I've been reading is like, for instance, they've been doing these trials with cancer, and you can do like these virtual reality things. And for not cancer, for like burn. Well, they've been doing that too, but for like burn patients, and they were able to get it to where like people had a reduction in their pain better than morphine just by playing this video game. It's like a virtual reality one called like, I think it's like Snow World or something like that. And what's interesting is like if similar to gambling, if you can get like that dopamine rush where you feel like that intense pleasure, or you can get the serotonin rush where you can feel like increased mood, you think better, that kind of stuff. Or if you get like the what's the other one? Oh man. Crap. What is endorphins, where it's like that opioid type thing that we naturally make. That's something that feels really, really good. And when you get that from these games, it can make it easier for us, like biologically, to then respond to wanting to play more, because then that creates it for us.
It creates a reward mechanism.
Exactly. Just like when you're at the blackjack table and you're like, I can hit on that next one, and then you keep wanting to go back for more because you know what that feels like, and you keep going back for it.
Now, maybe it's just not phrased that way, but phrased this way. There are people that, if we want to tie this back to exercise or whatever, there are people that exercise too much to the point where like they overtrain, which becomes a detriment to whatever they want to do. What about a point of diminishing returns? Because like, again, talking about spending all your time playing, like I know for me personally, like there are peak times where I will be a better player necessarily like between X hour and other hour, and if I've played over like 4 or 5, I immediately start playing worse.
So that's probably that's performance cycles, and that's, again, I can like layman's term, like not layman's term, I can like do some base knowledge on that because of what I've been learning from Weldon and Jonathan, and
it's almost like tapering but for gaming.
But like that sort of stuff, then I'm not going to be as like on in terms of like I don't feel comfortable sharing something that would be completely off when we're.
I was just curious.
I think, like, I mean, I have my opinions, but whether they're right or not, I don't know.
As far as the comparison to gambling, do you think that maybe League or video games in general, but maybe specifically League because we're talking and we're all familiar with it, is similar because every time you queue up for ranked, you're putting your LP on the line.
Gambling our time.
Well, I was thinking every time you play, you're gonna either win or lose, and you see this number go up or down just like you do in the slot machines. I mean, I'm just trying to make comparisons to the only other behavioral thing that's currently in the books.
I mean, that actually is a really good comparison. I like that.
Where was it?
I thought it was kind of snarky at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, every time you queue up, you getting this somewhat of a rush that maybe you get the same type and maybe if you were to highlight that on an MRI while they're pulling a slot machine and you're queuing up and you're getting that rank accepted, hit the accept button. Yeah. We all know that sound. It creates a little in your head and a little bug in your head. I don't know. And then I was thinking this sports comparison as far as that rush, the competitive adrenaline you get after winning a big match. I mean, I honestly think that's somewhat similar. I mean, as far as winning a big sports game or making the team goal run score.
Yeah, if you were to win
it's not wrong though to have that. Like that's not a bad thing. It's just
but being addicted to that feeling so much so that you maybe neglect other. Yeah, I don't know.
But it's also much harder to hit that high in a professional sport. Like you're only have so many opportunities to hit a game-winning 3, right? It's not like you hit a game-winning 3 and like, yeah, I'm gonna do that again and again and again. No, no. You can't.
I still remember like the game-winning hit I had to get to the softball finals in slow pitch softball. It was the best feeling ever.
You would play softball.
It was so much fun.
But you clearly weren't addicted enough to keep doing it, right?
No, what happened was I had kids and I got really slow.
There you
go. Drinking this and
You're drinking Rolling Rock?
No, I'm drinking Heineken.
Oh God, I'm gonna dry heave.
Hey, if it's good enough for James Bond, it's good enough for Chris Alphenaar.
That's because I'm trying to get into my inner Dutch here. Like I'm trying to represent.
Yeah, I've lost respect.
How about you stop?
I'm drinking Bud Light in a cut-off T-shirt, and I've lost respect for you. Okay, so none of us live in China, right? For as far as I know, that none of these guys, including Chris, live in China right now. So, seeing as we don't live in China, there is no such thing as video game addiction as classified in the United States. Let's put it that way. Does not mean it's not a real condition. So, if I have diagnosed myself or somebody else has diagnosed me with the 5 pieces of, let's say, the Chinese DSM or whatever it may be, what can I do in the United States to find any kind of help?
Okay, so there's a few things that you'd want to ask yourself. Like, for instance, if you feel like the reason why you're playing is because you're trying to relieve anxiety or you're trying to, let's just stick with that. So let's relieve anxiety or depression, something like that. Then something that would be helpful could be, behavioral things are one thing, but like specifically what they talked about was if you're using video games as a way to, enhance those chemicals in your brain, then you could get on medication if you need to be able to, like an SSRI, to be able to kind of help balance that out if that's something that your brain isn't producing enough of. So that's an option. There you have to go to a doctor. You can just get that from your primary care doctor. You don't have to go to like a psychiatrist for that. So that'd be one thing. If you could do those same things with behavioral stuff. So like you could exercise more. You could, begin spending time with family and friends, trying to find hobbies in other activities that maybe you had either forgotten or something that's new. Those are some good places to start, I would say.
Okay.
It's pretty basic, but it really is pretty basic. It's not because addiction's tough because it's one of those things where like you're always going like you it's hard to break that habit because you're used to that. It's like your response, and then a person feels pretty awful when they're in a sense like detoxing off of whatever their addiction is. Definitely. And so it's not going to be like an easy thing. And so that's having support is really powerful too. Like having somebody that you can, it doesn't have to be a therapist, but it could be, but someone that you feel like you can tell them what you're going through, tell them some of the things that you're asking for support from, because doing it alone is really difficult, any addiction.
I think you've got a lot of like having a crutch for one, but like having somebody you report to on that and in some way like makes I feel like you'd be way more responsible with that, or feel way more like if you just told yourself I'm going to do this.
Yep.
Okay.
Because it keeps you accountable to that person.
Yeah, exactly. And if they're going to help you through that, be it a professional or not, Like, even if it's just one of your friends that you're saying, hey, I want you to help me do this.
Yeah.
That's already like one of the more positive things you could do, which is connecting more with your friends. But then that'll build upon itself if you can keep with it, or they can help you keep with it too.
Yeah. I read a lot of stuff that's like for like building your own, like, how do I want to put it? Like, getting just like trying to enhance like myself as a person. And one of the things that I've read is like, if you share something that you want to do, like a goal with somebody else, you're much more likely to actually accomplish it than if you just keep it to yourself. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of goes along with that too.
They say that even just for like working out or goals, like just
just
put it out there, and then you'll be more likely to hold yourself accountable. I think one thing. Oh, sorry.
Well, I wanted to continue the conversation on diagnosing and finding treatment, and that's my next point here, or however you want to put it, is that again, not being in China, whatever, not having those places set up. Are there places popping up around the United States that do treat video game addiction? Are there any numbers I can call, websites I can visit? Anybody, if I go to a credible therapist or psychologist, whatever I'm looking for on Google, should they be able to help me in some form or fashion? So
you could definitely go to a therapist. You wouldn't be diagnosed with this. It would probably be, I guess it depends on your symptoms. Like if you're talking about like you're anxious, then that could be what you'd be diagnosed with instead. Something that is like a pretty, I don't want to say bland, but like a diagnosis that isn't really like that heavy is called an adjustment disorder. And that's basically like, if you think of it as like, if this certain situation, like for instance, let's say I had a family member who died and that's grief, that could be different. Let's say I like lost my job and I was really stressed out and maybe depressed. Then I could be diagnosed with an adjustment disorder because if I still had my job, I wouldn't be experiencing these things. Does that make sense? So it's because of a specific thing. So you might get that kind of a diagnosis, which is once you figure that out, then it's kind of gone. But so you could go to a therapist and you could try to work on like you like use cognitive behavioral therapy as one. Just try to work with that person, but in each place that you live, then there's different centers. Like every county has a community mental health center. Anyone can go there, but there's also like if you have private insurance, you can go, wherever else is available in the area. Like I always forget the website part. I think it's. Let me look it up because I forgot to do this part, so I apologize.
Do universities often? Because I feel like a lot of listeners are probably college students, and
there's a lot of universities that offer counseling.
Yeah.
Like,
I would assume so.
I know, like Ohio State offers, I think, like 10 sessions for free. It takes a couple weeks to get in, but that's better than not any at all.
When I went to Western Michigan University, then that was where I did my first practicum. Was at the school with students, and it was for free.
Yeah.
So
I think Florida State has the same type of thing.
Is that's another thing I was thinking. Besides college setup, is it like an early? I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but if you think you have something, like you have a doubt that I might have some problem. Do they do like a small thing where you can just like go get, I don't want to say a quick check, but like not paying a ton of money to end up in like having a permanent therapist, but like getting like a checkup, I guess is the kind of what I would think is a
mental
comparison.
Health checkup?
Yeah, I guess is kind of is what I'm thinking of, but I don't know a technical term. Because I think somebody who might be listening and might say, I've got an issue, but I don't want to
be stuck going to a doctor for the rest of my life, or something like that.
Or breaking a bank. Like, I just want to know if that might be an issue and then go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like when somebody comes to where I work, then they have to have an intake assessment, and they kind of gather all the information and give that person a diagnosis in terms of whether they have something or not, and give them what they think could be a good idea of what their services would best fit for them. So, but that would be like an hour and a half, usually is what it takes. But like a lot of times, then with movies and stuff, and I've talked about this before. Then, some people come and have seen me for a few months and then it's done. Some people do see me for longer. I've seen people for years, but it really is just depending upon the person and what they find to be helpful. Like it doesn't have to be one of those things where what I like to say with my clients is like, if there's goals that you want to work on and you feel like I'm helping you get there, then let's keep doing it. And because sometimes then, that's just, I think that's going to become more the norm where people are accepting of that, because we do that with doctors all the time. And I'm not going to get in a soapbox about this, sorry, but
the episode for you to soapbox.
Yeah,
right? I know.
Your chance.
Your soapbox derby.
But I really think that we do that in so many other ways, and there's so much stigma that comes along with it, and it just frustrates me because it doesn't make anyone crazy or anything. It's just like we all have this stuff happen to us all the time, and I think that people don't want to ever feel like there's anything wrong with us. I don't want to. I think it's a real thing, and so people won't do stuff because they don't want to have this perception of what they aren't, and I think that keeps us stuck. And I don't know. The website
even just a second ago, like Mitch didn't even know like how to phrase it, like to even go get a mental health checkup. Like no one, there's no setup, there's no, you don't know what to do.
It's not common knowledge.
It's not an established, oh, I'm sick, I have a cold, I go to the doctor, I know that. I think I might be having some addiction issues or mental health issues. What do I do? There's no setup, and I mean we talk about this all the time with mental health, and I'm sure this is the soapbox you might have even been veering towards, is the fact that in this country we really don't have a lot of awareness of mental health.
A lot of drugs,
and we like to just look the other way because it's uncomfortable to talk about to a certain extent.
Okay, well then this is a good segue, unless you have something that's like dying to get out. Serial.
I do.
Okay, Chris then. If Chris does too, go for it.
I was just gonna say just a quick story. I had some client the other day that they were like, oh my gosh, like we were all done and stuff because stuff had turned out good. Like that's the weird thing about my job is when you're doing good, then I'm like, bye. It's kind of sad, but it's also happy. But they were saying, they're like, man, like when I first was coming here, like before I came, I thought that they're like, your office is really nice. And like I thought there was gonna be like padded walls and stuff, and I was like, no, like that's not what's gonna be like. And so, like, there's so much like I have to tell people all the time, like, because you come here, you're not crazy. Because people are like, now I'm crazy, aren't I? I'm like, no, you're not. You're just normal. Sorry. Okay, that's it.
That's because of like media perception. Like
stigma,
movies, and like I love so many movies that have like different mental health stuff, but it's like so not even close to what is actually happening with those things. Like, what's the one with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Wolf?
Well,
no,
Wall Street.
It was a long time ago where he was in like a mental ward. It
was that Shutter Island?
Yeah, Shutter Island. Yeah, I love that movie, but like that's not what's going on.
So that's your
they like
version.
to add something for like a not even a hot button issue, but make it, I don't know, like throw out those stigma and just say, yep, that's totally what that is. And psychology, like, no, that's not even close.
No,
stop doing it.
I imagine
everyone eats it up.
It's true. Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was saying in movies, I imagine that's what it's like when I see like someone hacking at a computer. I'm like, that's not how that works. As a tech person,
just bang on the keyboard.
Programmer.
Yeah,
let me trace his IP address using a Visual Basic GUI. Yeah, thanks, CSI. That's not how that works. I had a quick question, and it was kind of a throwback to what we said in the original episode, and it was something that I said that I kind of used and I've heard about, and I have a computer science background, but I did some reading and I listened to Freakonomics episodes, especially on behavioral economics, and you're probably going to know exactly what I'm going to talk about because I mentioned it earlier. Commitment devices and using it to help yourself wean off of things that you. But this might only work when you're aware that this is an issue. So like I might have a period going through times in my life where I've been maybe addicted or at least doing it very, very heavily, and I know I shouldn't be doing that much. And I like give myself a commitment device in order to steer away from it. Obviously, this would only work if you're self-aware that you know that this is hurting you, because I'm sure there's lots of people that are addicted that don't even realize that they're crumbling. Right. But one thing I did was I uninstalled League of Legends because it takes like 3 hours to reinstall the damn game, and I stayed away from it for 3 or 4 months. Now, that was a complete cold turkey sort of uninstall, and then I'd still watch streams occasionally, stuff like that. But I felt like that helped me get out of a rut because I was in a bad spot. I was after a breakup, etc. So I was just doing nothing but gaming all night, stuff like that. I would be up to 4 a.m. and then going to work tired and stuff like that. This is like 5-6 years ago. But what do you think about that? Is for someone that thinks that like as a commitment device a healthy way to deal with it, or?
Yeah, I think like trying to find ways to like I have someone that I know that had to do the same thing and I think that it was wise because we all have not everybody does. Some people have more addictive personalities than others, and it might be hard to be able to. It might be easy to be attached to that kind of a thing, and once you get into that rabbit hole, then it kind of starts to happen. The next thing you know, it's 6 hours or 8 hours, whatever it could be. And so having like those kind of stop gaps, whatever they're called, like the things that keep you from getting there fast, I think that's really wise. I think a flip side could be too. Is something that I did when I was studying for my licensing exam. Then I would just want to play because I was just like, I don't want to do this. This is boring. And so I would give myself time frames of how long I'd have to study before I could actually do something outside of that. And again, that some of that stuff it comes down to. I don't know if it's not willpower, but you have to be committed to that. And that kind of go back to what Mitch was talking about earlier too, of like having somebody accountable, someone that you can, say, this is what I'm doing. Please help me be able to get there. But yeah, I think that's a viable way for sure.
And if you don't have that self-restraint because you realize it's bad for you, but you can't help, I think that commitment device, what it helps with is that like kind of instant gratification or that impulse. Like, they put this stuff that's impulse buy near the checkout. League is just a click away. So it's just an impulse and you could so easily get into the game and halfway through the game, you're realizing, fuck, I shouldn't be doing this with my life. So, just making that barrier to entry, that commitment device a little higher than a double click on a desktop application. I feel like that might help for some people that are realizing, they need to step away from a little bit.
Yeah. And when you said that, like the impulse thing, then that was something that goes along with that serotonin. Like if you don't have enough, like the serotonin helps you with making decisions too. And if you don't have enough, then it makes it more likely for you to act impulsively. That's something that goes along with like gambling. And that also I would say could apply in this situation. That's apples to oranges because gambling is for sure like has enough scientific research behind it. And this one, like with internet gaming, then again, it's something that they're still developing more research on. But if that's what they're kind of comparing it to and saying it seems similar to this, so that's why I'm kind of taking a bit of a leap and saying that it could be the same thing. But in terms of like impulse control and being able to say stop, then if you don't have enough of that serotonin, then that's going to make it easier for you to say, yeah, let's do it.
Now, the last topic that I want to hit on tonight is actually working with somebody or watching somebody that is addicted to League of Legends or video games. We're really doing the general umbrella of video games tonight. But if you have a buddy, a roommate, a friend, a sister, a brother, whatever it may be, somebody that you know that is addicted, and you notice that it is creeping into life and taking time away from you and taking time away from others, how do you, on the outside, handle that? What can you do for that person, if anything, to help them come to the realization that they are addicted to something? It couldn't even be League of Legends. It might be drugs or alcohol or gambling.
There's a lot of angles to this. I would say the first thing would be it depends on how close you are to that person. Like, and that's pretty self-explanatory. That doesn't take me to say that, right? But that's something that I think really matters because what Adam, you've talked before about what Dom used to tell you when you were playing. Like he can get away with a lot more than somebody else might be able to, and so that's a really important thing. The other thing is too, and I don't know if we talked about it before in other times that I've been on here with you guys. Like, have I talked about the stages of change? Have I ever talked about that?
I don't think so.
So, like, real quick, there's stages of change that a person is in terms of that we're all in whenever we want to do anything. So let's say that it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you want to stop or start, then the first thing could be pre-contemplation. That's like where you feel like, let's go with the addiction piece. Like if a person's in pre-contemplation stage, then it's everybody else's fault. Nothing's wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. You're just trying to cause stuff. So that's second stage is contemplation. That's where a person's like, yeah, I see some stuff's going on that maybe isn't cool, but it's not that big of a deal. So whatever. Then the third stage is preparation, where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see some stuff's going on. I think I want to change this. So I'm going to start, figuring out some ways that I can change my behavior. Fourth is action stage. That's when you're actually applying the things that you've kind of acquired in the preparation stage. And then if things go well in the action stage, you move on to maintenance stage. And that's where you just keep doing the stuff because it's working. And then there's kind of a sixth stage we call relapse. And that's like if all of a sudden you didn't recognize something else may have triggered you to get back into that thing, then it could kick you back into any of those stages, but it just depends on how you view it. But let's say it could kick you back into like preparation stage, like, oh, I didn't see that as a possible trigger, so I got to figure out a way to handle that one, and then get back into action stage, and then you're good. So the reason I say that is because I may say, come to a friend and say, hey man, I'm noticing like you aren't spending time with us as much. Like you're spending a lot of time at home. I see you online all the time. Like it seems like, you're spending more time than what, like it's really affecting our relationships. Like, is there something that's going on? Like, how are you doing? That kind of stuff. It's asking questions, and that person, like where they're at in the stage of potentially listening to you about those things, like the way they interpret that is based upon what stage of change they're in, and what stage of change they're in affects how you then move forward. Because if they're like, yeah, man, I'm glad you said that because I've kind of been feeling this way too, then boom, you can start helping them with stuff right away. Like that's when, like as a therapist, that's what I love. I'm like, yes, I get to like, see, I get to give them all my tools. Here's some sheets. Here's like all this different stuff that you can go home and do. I
just imagine you like, you automatically get out of your chair, papers fly up behind you, you run over to your cabinet, you're like, oh, let's go. He opens the cabinet full of books.
I can't tell you how excited I get when people are in that stage, but like that's not always the norm. Like that's like, so instead, then I may have to help somebody move into that stage by kind of helping them by I don't know, just being there, just kind of being someone that once that does happen, then you can I don't know, like be able to reflect some of things like, hey, yeah, I've been noticing this too. Like if they say it, then you can start kind of helping that thought process along. Like maybe there is something that's going on once they mention it. I don't know that there's a lot of angles to that. Does anyone want to jump into any questions or ideas?
Go ahead.
So one thing I was thinking of there is obviously that closeness was really important, as you mentioned, but I think the not attacking is really important, the leading somebody in. And if they can, I'm not saying baiting somebody into saying something about themselves, but kind of helping them understand it, and it is really important because then, as you said, you can help them. But if they're in that previous stage, I don't remember all of them because that's the first time I've ever heard of them. But at an earlier stage, regardless, could be that like, and this could be very useful in somebody who's not sure how to handle it. Like, invite them to do stuff frequently. Like that's something that you can easily then not jump in with, but you can show them, say, hey man, we've been trying to hang out all these times. It's not shown up. We haven't heard from you. You can start like, it's small things, but it's never attacking, and it's always something.
Yeah.
Well, humorously for me, because of how close my friends with Wrecker, I've been really close with Wrecker in my entire life. Everybody who's listening to this podcast knows how close I am with that guy. I literally had him
with him as long as I've known Adam, and that's been over 10 years. So
he came into my house, unplugged my computer, and said, "You're coming to this concert with me. Here's $20. Get in the car." And he wouldn't let me sit back down and play WoW that night. Like that's but that's how close we are. He forced me out of the house, and it didn't change anything because I went back the next night and kept playing. But it was that first step that helped me move toward the resolution where I have friends who care about me, recognize there's something wrong, and want to get me out of the house. And I still have really fond memories of that specific concert that we went to.
Yeah.
Because of how it happened.
They're not trying to like do something negative. Like it's usually with their best intentions, unless they're pulling you out of the chair and starting to play instead, which might be a completely different thing to discuss with them. I think if they have the right intentions, the person you are trying to help should realize it if you keep trying to help.
Well, and also, Adam, like you remember that, so obviously it was like one of those steps that helped you get to where eventually where you recognized it. It doesn't like oftentimes, and I have to I have to kind of balance this too as a therapist. Like I can see like where it could get to and get really excited about it and I want to get there, but like it takes those steps. Like I use a lot of bad analogies in therapy, and so I always give the one of like walking a mile. Like each step is necessary. If you take one away, it's not a mile. So like those sort of like that one intervention, or whatever you want to call that, then that was one of the things that helped, because otherwise you wouldn't have remembered it. Like that was obviously a big thing. And Mitch, you stole some ideas, so I'm mad. That was really good what you said earlier, like about like, you know, all the things you like, the way you approach it and everything. One thing I'll add to it, so that way I don't feel quite as mad, is like when you had said that the way, how do you put it, like the way that you don't just yell at them and stuff. Like, so in terms of communication, one way that you can do that is like if you say, it's changing you statements to I statements. And so some of you may be familiar with that, but like instead of saying like you're addicted, then you could say, you know, it usually goes, I feel blank when blank, please blank. Okay. So it's, I feel, and it could be sad that I'm not able to spend time with you as much. Can we please hang out sometime?
It's like
that's
Mad Libs for addiction.
Well,
I've heard good.
It's for anything. Yeah.
That's
It's
really
anything.
that's good for real life in
relationships.
general.
Absolutely.
You statements are bad unless it's you're cool.
I've heard
I
that a
think-
lot, especially with just relationships in general, especially with significant others, and trying to, you know, communicate things in a way that doesn't come off as attacking. Because even if you have your best interest in mind, you can really start the conversation in a bad direction that doesn't solve anything. If you,
It takes a lot of practice too.
Yeah, it does.
Because like I'm in the middle of an argument with my wife, and I'm just like, damn it, I need to use I statements, but I'm angry right now. I don't want to use I statements. Like, I'm a therapist. I'm supposed to be practicing these things. I'm like, but I'm not at work, so I don't care.
Is that the one time you get to not use those?
And this entire time he's having this argument in his head, and his wife's screaming at him like, "Why don't you listen to me?"
Yeah, it's funny because like later I'll be like, Kelly, I was trying to use I statements. She's like, what was funny though is that she's better at remembering to do them before I do.
Oh,
it's so bad. It's so bad. It's good, but it's bad for me.
that's great. You taught her well.
Well, you get to use you statements when you're a therapist, I'd assume, as opposed to like you're not going to tell your patients, I think that we don't get to hang out enough. Cause
I think you should come in and spend more money.
So what I usually do in therapy is something called active listening, and that's where it comes across like in a nutshell what it is, and it's more than this, but like an easy way to know what that is you basically repeating back to them what they said. Mm-hmm. And what that helps with is it allows them to hear their language and what they're saying, because it kind of disarms it, because you're just kind of letting them hear what they're already saying, and gives them the opportunity to be like, oh, I'm hearing that from somebody different than me. I don't agree with that. But wait, I just said that. That's weird. And then I get to have that opportunity to be like, oh, so
You sound like a really
that,
annoying
that would be like-
gotcha.
You
yeah,
can't take it personally
like,
because it's kind of what they're saying themselves.
it helps them gain insight into like maybe this is
Self-realization.
something that can change. So that's something that is like, if you're, that's how I don't use like you statements basically.
Well, I think we covered a lot tonight. Chris, is there anything that you wanted to wrap up with, or anything that you felt like you didn't get a chance to discuss before we really wrap up this conversation?
Think of it all afterwards. But the website that I always try to plug is just the National Institute for Mental Health. I think that's a good place to start. But I really think that, and that is just like, it's like www.nimh.nih.gov. So I know it's
The government making it more complicated than it ever needs to be. With
Absolutely.
Their URLs.
So they have ways that you can contact them. And I think that that's a good place to start. But every place has, if you need to go somewhere to talk with us with a professional, then, every county has a place where you can go. And yeah, I think that was pretty much everything that I wanted to go over with you guys. I can't think of anything else.
No, I think we covered a lot in the last hour, and it's a lot of information for anybody to take in. And anybody that I've talked to, I mean, we just had Sammy Glow. He just said, thank you for spending so much time on such an important topic. And everybody I've talked to has said the same thing. This is a really important topic. There's not enough people talking about it. I'm glad that you guys are bringing it to the forefront, etc. So, Chris, thank you for taking your time out of your evening to come down and talk to us about league addiction and addiction in general. And if you have any other information that you think that we didn't discuss or that we may, that other people may need to know, I'm going to make a Reddit thread about this, and you can go ahead and toss it in there, and I'll let people know. If you guys want more information, check out our subreddit at T-Force Network in a few days, or even email us, send us a DM. Our DMs are open. You can slide on in those if you'd like. Just keep everything PG, please. You can email us, you can tweet us, you can DM us, you can do whatever you need to do. Facebook messages are open. Messages in the subreddit are open to the moderators. If you want more information, I can pass your message along to Chris, and Chris can try to give you more information. He's not going to give you free counseling, but he will give you more information if you need it or if you have any questions. Correct.
You can DM me too if you want. It's on Twitter. I've had people that Weldon sent me that have questions about mental health stuff, and I try to do a good job what Adam just said too of balancing between information and therapy. Like I'm not going to be able to diagnose. I'm not going to be able to do those sort of things, but I can give you ideas. I can give you some answer some questions and that sort of a thing. I'm trying to make sure that I stay ethical in that realm too, because I don't want it to be where you feel like you're getting therapeutic advice, even though that's that's my job. So yeah, but feel free to DM me on Twitter. They're open. Oh, it's at C Alphenaar, which is really hard to spell. So
it's probably put it in two A's at the end. Yeah, it'll be in the show notes. You can find him over. You guys can go find the Hearth of the Cards podcast over here to check it out. It is the Hearthstone podcast. They are going into the new what is it? The Old Gods deck.
Whispers of the Old Gods. Yeah, it's been fun going over the new cards. So, not quite as fun as winning the tournament against you guys last weekend, but it was pretty fun.
I love how there's only one person
so
out of
count.
I think it's funny that there's only one person out of your group that keeps trying to cause shit. And he just keeps getting Xanthos. He just keeps getting ignored, and I'm like, all right, you can keep trying, but none of us care.
I know. Corey, I was talking to Corey, and he said, and I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna go play. I just let Andrew do all the shit talking for us because it's whatever. It was fun. Covered. Yeah, I blame Shira for not being there.
Yeah, it's my fault.
I hated it. If there would have been some Nunu Gunblade, then it probably would have been a whole different thing.
I haven't played that since they changed Nunu because the changes killed that.
There was one offensive item in that game, maybe.
Yeah, there was a
Devour.
There was a very large lack of frozen mallets on that Saturday.
That was true.
There was no frozen mallets built that I can remember.
It was replaced by ZZ Rot. Your hatred for Frozen Mallet was replaced by your love for ZZ Rot.
So stupid. Where's my Frozen Mallets?
No, if anything, that shows you that the listeners love us so much that they want you to be happy with the ZZ Rot purchases, and they weren't trying to make you sad.
No, I was still sad having to play
game.
Crit Galio.
I did. You specifically wanted to play nothing but champions that were good with Frozen Mallets, so the fact that there were no Frozen Mallets, that actually hurts your strategy.
I know. We had this awesome strategy set up in the back end with champions that we were going to play because we knew we were going to have to build Frozen Mallets, and then they never came. So our strategy got completely fucked.
I don't think somebody leaked our strategy.
Damn it, you're right.
Sure, because it wasn't there.
Yeah, it had to have been me.
That's how the Hearth of the Cards won. You're cheating. You don't actually believe in the Hearth of the Cards.
30 words I said in the chat for the 20 minutes of the stream I could watch.
I think knowing that I was going to have to build Hurricane and still picking Ari might not have been the best choice. Hurricane Ari does not do a lot of damage.
Yeah, sadly, we didn't get those choices.
Hurricane and all those other items.
Right?
Doesn't do very much damage.
Ohm Wrecker.
Ohm Wrecker, ZZ Rot, Guardian Angel first item. You're not going to do a lot.
I never even got to Guardian or to
Team
ZZ
fights
Rot.
lasted a year and a half.
Did they? That was the best part.
I went back and watched it today. I was like, holy shit, this game was 56 minutes long because of how long the team fights took.
I can't, like the last game that we played when our jungler was Jungle Braum. I was dying laughing. Like, because there was a point when I died and I just watched him auto attack a turret. And I was like crying almost. I was laughing so hard. That shield going so fast was so funny.
I forgot until now about the low damage when you guys tried to fight Baron. You guys tried to sneak a Baron.
Oh my god!
Yeah, with all of those
such
items.
A bad idea.
I was like, holy shit, that was the worst plan with these kind of items.
It was, and then somebody like we're like, should we do Baron like later in the game, and then we're like, we can never do Baron.
Yeah.
Never again are we trying that.
Like an actual raid boss, you're just trying to sustain.
Yeah,
That's it.
All right, guys.
The whole time.
A couple GAs, you'll get it eventually.
We're
Exactly.
yeah. Well, you had the GAs. Yeah, you had the GAs pop up. You might be able to you bring it down, but all right. I'm gonna end it there because we're just a little over our hour anyway. Chris, thank you so much for coming on. Please enjoy continuing doing the Hearth of the Cards as we are enjoying your content. Just make sure that Alex isn't playing while he is.
Oh my gosh! Right, the clicking.
That's like number one thing I yelled at every one of these guys about 200 episodes ago. Do not do anything while you're podcasting. That's your focus for an hour. Anyway,
he still denies it was him though.
Bullshit. I don't fucking believe it. All right. Anyway, guys, that's episode number 348 of the Trinity Force podcast. Guys, thank you for watching us, and we will see you all on Monday with another episode, likely patch notes. Peace.
See you guys.